know the phrase that pays. Well, hello. What? Look at these faces. So many faces, so many places. All right, guys. You ready to rock and roll? You ready? You ready? Well, hello. And welcome back to Pencil, your favorite weekly Pinch Me I'm Dreaming, video scope watching, Rolex wearing, diamond ring wearing, wheeling dealing, live cast with three expert cartoonists. I was about to do the whole Ric Flair thing, but I stopped myself. Guys, welcome back to Pencil. If you see three smiling angelic countenances on your video scope, you know what's about to happen. Let's do some introductions. Guys, my name is JAMAR NICHOLAS. I'm your first co-host. I wear many hats besides this beanie. I am on the board of the National Cartoonist Society and also the Philadelphia chapter chair. Well, the birds ain't doing so great right now. No birds. Also, I have a middle grade graphic novel series at Scholastic Graphics. Leon Extraordinary is the name of the series. Worst Friends Forever is in stores now. Leon 3, title to be announced, will be out a little bit earlier next year around this time. I'm very excited, and there will be a really big puffy piece about it when it gets closer. You know, time will tell. You know I'm going to talk about it. But I would be remiss if I did not introduce my cohort, co-conspirator, and co-conquistador. Guys, if you're into wrestling, I heard that John Cena, that's right, you can't see him, is retiring. So I know somebody that may be able to take his place. You know him as a world heavyweight champion of web comics. He's coming into the big times. Guys, give it up for, by God, it must be Stone Cold Stone Conley. What's up, Stone?
Hello. Are they looking for like a 56-year-old? Really?
How are your knees? How are your knees, Steve?
Awful. Hello, my name is Steve Conley. I am the creator of your 23rd favorite webcomic, The Middle Age, which you can read at middleagecomic.com. It's over on the tab is the webtoons and the Go Comics. And I make TTRPG stuff. So if you play the Dungeons and the Dragons, you can check it out over at Stabracadabra. That's my current one. If you play D&D, you want to be a magic sword and actually wield the fighter, you can get that now. One more week on that, and we're at stabracadabra.com. That's on Kickstarter. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Tower of Power, the Man of the Hour, Too Sweet to Be Sour, Darkhawk's daddy. He drew your childhood. You didn't even know it. He didn't even know it. And then you look back, and Mike was there the whole time.
That's right.
In your window.
Mr. Mike Manley.
Are you reading my comics? Are you reading my comics? Hello, everyone. My name's Mike Manley. And yes, I probably drew your childhood. And I probably drew a coloring book or a kid's book or a comic book that you read or watched a cartoon that I storyboarded or did background designs on or something. So it's a wide-ranging profession for me.
Mike Manley, you know, it's funny that we talk about things of this nature, especially with the subject of our show tonight. You know, one of my favorite things, if you know JN, is to love it. You know, I like to talk about the iceberg, right? People only see the tippy top, but all of the stuff underneath, people they never think about it.
You only see the top of Jamar? We don't see the bottom of Jamar.
Not everybody gets to see the bottom of Jamar, like that. But it's like to that, like we talk about all the time, how I'm always like pushing into our promos that we're three expert cartoonists. You don't get to be an expert cartoonist by just doing one thing, right? Especially in the modern cartoonist, you have to almost have the arms of Vishnu. Right, you have to have like all these things spinning all the time, and even you talking about doing kids' books, coloring books, all types of stuff just to kind of get, you know, your monthly nut going. I think that may be a little shocking to some people. So, Mike, when you're talking to people out in the wild, or even back when you were and trying to get the young people going, Were they ever surprised by all of the things that you've done over the course of your career?
I suppose when you had you get some mileage on you, you look back at the things and you tell somebody, oh, oh, I did this, oh, I did that. Yeah, to a young person, it seems like, wow, like, you did so many things. And, but, you're driving the car, so you're not aware of it in a way because you're always moving on to the next thing, you know? Uh,
Mhm.
and so a lot of it was just because, you do one thing that leads to another thing. You meet that person, they go, "Oh, hey, my friend," or this person, or someone's looking, or someone calls you on the phone. I mean, it's usually once the snowball starts rolling down the hill, you never know what opportunity is going to lead. Sometimes, someone you work with 5 years ago. I mean, I'm doing a job now, an extra job now,
Mhm.
based upon a student that was in school that's no longer in existence at UArts that I haven't taught at in since 2010.
Wow.
Right? So you never know what goes out into the universe creates ripples. You never know what those ripples will return to you. Um, and that's happened quite a bit in my career, and I think that will sort of feed back into the subject we're discussing tonight. So yeah, and also I like maybe you're the kind of artist that likes to just draw your strip and you don't have any desire to, or you just want to draw Batman, or you just want to design characters, or you just want to do kids books. I mean, there are some artists who just want to do one thing, right? Or they're only really good at or really best at one or two things. But
Yeah, they just want to ink. They just want to do one part of the process.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for a long time the industry as a whole, I'm talking about the whole industry, was set up that, for the at least the first half of my career, going on the way back, you could just be an inker. You could just be a
Right.
colorist. You could just be a letterer. You could have a trade. You know what I mean? So I don't really think it's that way as much now. It's certainly not in mainstream where, the occupations like being an inker. I know a lot of inkers can't find work, or certainly can't find regular work. So, one of the things we don't really think about because of that, again, because it's like the frog in the pot, right? You don't realize, if you're not really paying attention and very conscious of it, that the environment is really changing. And sometimes it comes in big jumps. Sometimes suddenly a publisher will go out, or there'll be an implosion, or something like the internet will come along, right? And within a couple of years, really changes everything fundamentally. And so, if in 1984, when I started, I never would have predicted or been able to predict what would happen with the direct market by 95, 10 years later, 11 years later, how forces really change. And then by 2000, what would happen to distribution? Because I wasn't really thinking about distribution when I started, right? I mean, I was aware of it, but I wasn't aware of it as aware of it as I would become after self-publishing, and then the result when Capital City, and now look what was happening with Diamond, right? So there's always forces out there that are constantly, Marvel going bankrupt. There was a thread this week on the gal that
damn it just fell on my head.
Who did Miles Morales, created Miles Morales, right? And how she got like zero sum gain, which again, if you study the history of the business, is actually typical. And I think that people coming in later think, oh, if you invent Miles Morales, you're going to become a millionaire.
Right.
And that typically has never been the case in comic books. Now, you might become a millionaire if you're Jim Davis, or you're a multi-millionaire like Jim Davis or Charles Schultz. But in comic books, there are no millionaires. There's nobody who made $1 million working in the old system. If you made $1 million, like the Image guys, if they made that money, that was a new thing. And if they were coming along now, you wouldn't make $1 million either. Even if you created Spawn now and they made a TV and a movie and whatever, you're probably not going to make. Not in comic books, you're not going to make $1 million. So the idea that you would create an idea like Miles Morales, which would pump fresh air and interest into a character like Spider-Man, and you would not be able to go like, well, I paid off my college loan,
Right.
or I put money in my 401k so I know I can retire. That's actually typical, and I think people are surprised by that. But when I had a character agreement with Marvel, for the original Marvel, for Darkhawk, which then had to be renegotiated because that Marvel went bankrupt. Right? And so you got a little signing thing, and then in that contract, it also stipulated things like what you would get paid for a toy, what you would get paid if there was a movie, and it ain't no $1 million. It's not, so Jim Starlin made more money off of the stuff that one or two creators that he made for DC than he did for like Thanos and Strax and all those other Warlock and all those other characters that he did. He made zilch, because Disney is not in business to make you a millionaire.
Right.
And I think isn't that kind of a callback to maybe the old system of this stuff? Like nobody was signing up to get page gigs at Marvel thinking that they were going to create the next $1 kajillion anything. Right, you're kind of making characters to fill in the story that you have to draw the next couple of months.
Well, they also have these very convenient determinations of what consists of being a character. So they go, well, Miles Morales is a new character, but Spider-Man is not a new character. So therefore, Miles Morales is a derivative form of Spider-Man. So it's not really new. See, they have a lot of little things. So when the Captain Marvel movie came out, the first one, I got a check for like $1,000, I think, because there was a character that Mark Grunwald and I created in an issue of Quasar that I drew. So I got a screen credit and I got a check. But I'll take it, $1,000, that'll pay my internet.
Let's go get some burritos.
It'll pay my health care for a month, but yeah, people think, the guy who made out probably the best in the old days was Bob Kane because he had a lawyer.
Hmm.
And the guys who made out the worst were Siegel and Schuster, who only started getting some of what they were due when the Christopher Reeves movie came out. And the bad press, also spotlighted by Neil Adams, pointed out, like, you know, I'm Harry Reasoner. You know, the man who created Superman is blind and living in an old folks home kind of a thing. And like, oh shit. So they got shamed into giving them money. But yeah.
Well, that's kind of what's happening. Well, not really what's happening. It seems like somebody took kind of a interview with Sarah Kelly, who's the co-creator, Miles, however you want to do it with Bendis. And it sounded to me like she just answered the question, right? And I'm super paraphrasing because I didn't really read it, but it's like, hey, you must be rich because you co-created Miles. And she was like, no, I ain't getting money.
Yeah.
But then the internet went, what? But she knows that.
It's funny what the internet always thinks it knows everything. It is.
Right? It's your nosy uncle.
Right. Yeah. I heard they were rich. Right? No.
Yeah.
No. If you're not getting a piece of the licensing, that's what made Charles Schultz rich. That's what made Jim Davis rich, is the licensing. They would have been wealthy, right? They would have been wealthy from their strip, but they got rich from licensing. Met pays, as they say, as the old slogan was for when they had Peanuts as their spokesman, right? And I think that most people have no idea about the business end. We've had Hennessy on talking about, but most people don't know that until you have an experience where you have to hire an entertainment lawyer, and the entertainment lawyer will break it all down for you. Right? The entertainment lawyer will go, okay, well, you got this deal, and they'll give you an option money, and then but then you got to get a director, and you got to get a star, and then you get a budget. Then maybe out of all that, you get a couple $100,000, right? And depending upon how it's done, you end up being like Robert Kirkman, right? Or you end up being like Tony Moore, right? Depending upon how all that works out, whether you're getting any residuals, where you're getting a screen credit, a producer credit, and Hollywood always has a creative bookkeeping. So, Star Wars probably still hasn't made money on somebody's books somewhere. So people have no idea. They just assume, oh, you created this thing because it seems logical. Like, I invented Coca-Cola, therefore I should be doing well. But it's not. And if you're working in work for hire, which most comics that were ever made, were made for work for hire, you're not, which is one of the reasons why Kirby left Marvel. That's one of the reasons why Ditko left. In the 60s, when that stuff started making money, the word on the street was, that I heard, is that they were supposed to get more. And Martin Goodman was like, fuck you. That's my Spider-Man money. I created Spider-Man, bitch. Right? And so, he went to DC. One of the reasons why he went to DC. But that's that's normal. We tend to like to look at it as creative people, like, David versus Goliath, or, Hulk versus Galactus. we want there to be good guys or bad guys, but it's just business, right? And you can have, the comic strips is different because you're a sole creator, and so you split the profits with the syndicate because they're selling the strip. So you're creating a strip, they're selling the strip, right? It's a very different kind of deal than if you create Spider-Man. I create Darkhawk for Marvel. I don't get any money from Darkhawk unless Darkhawk is in a book that says Darkhawk. So I don't get a money. It's like the guy who created Wolverine. If I created Wolverine, and Wolverine's in every Marvel comic every week forever, I get zilch. I might get a little bit of money from a toy, depending upon what the contract considers to be a toy, because there were those hero clicks for Darkhawk, and I got no money for that.
Because it's not a toy.
Because it's not a toy, and it doesn't have 6 points of articulation, right? It actually says that in the contract. It says how many points of articulation it has to have in order for you to get money.
Wow.
Right? So again, and you have no opportunity to go in and inspect their books to see like, oh well, they over here and over there. You have no ability to inspect their books. You don't know where they're rounding up, rounding down, rounding off. You have no idea whatsoever. And if you're going to hire a lawyer, an entertainment lawyer, who probably gets $500 an hour to go try to do that, you would be poor before they even open the book, send the PDF. By the time you got the PDF, they'd be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, you owe me $5,000, but I'm only getting 2." And I learned that. I learned that the hard way.
Yeah.
Or from experience, because when I started self-publishing, I talked about this before. I sued a company that infringed on one of my trademarks, and only because I had spent the money and did the trademark was I able to sue them. But at that time, this is in the late 90s, the entertainment lawyer was $200 an hour. So I won a fair amount of money, but it was fees. And if I had not spent the $300 to trademark it, I wouldn't have even been able to do that. I would have had to sue them for copyright. But they still got to hire a lawyer, and he's not going to do it pro bono.
Yeah, right the first time.
That's right. Yeah, you're going to get boned, right? That's what's going to happen, right? Yeah. So, but
wow. So that little history lesson is a big part of the cartoonist iceberg, right?
That's part of my particular history, right? Yeah. But it also, I think, ties into our subject matter because I was very aware as a young person of the stories of my heroes getting screwed. And I took that into account as far as feeling I didn't want to get screwed, and I wanted to be, I wanted to be smart, and I wanted to be responsible, and I wanted to pay attention to this other stuff because you don't want to. There were so many stories of guys from the 40s and the 50s who created this stuff who ended up being in a real bad way, while the companies really profited. And some of them, didn't have great personalities. Some of them had, the kind of personality that didn't get along well, or maybe they weren't good businessmen in the fact that they didn't want to cause trouble. Maybe they were meek, or they didn't have a head for business,
Mm-hmm. This is our first kind of interaction with the chat. Hello, chat. As you guys are watching this live, you might see 2 yellow highlighted people in the chat. That is either me or Steve. I am all caps. Steve Conley is case sensitive, so if you see us, interact with us. America, hold on, I got to do it. America, this is you. Tom Zoller says That's one of the things, though, right? Jerry and Joe had no idea what the potential was because no one had ever been that big before.
Do we assume that? We don't know. Again, they were young. Bob Kane or Bob Kane's dad assumed it, right? So again, I think a lot has to do with your personality. Jack Kirby was a businessman. He had a partner. They co-created a lot of stuff for a bunch of different companies. Right. And I know a lot of people like to think, oh, well, Stan Lee was this evil Machiavellian guy and he, and he somehow screwed Jack Kirby. And I don't think Jack Kirby was screwed because he was like, oh, what? Oh, what? I don't know. No. I think what happened was it was all handshake deals. These guys knew each other for decades by that point. And hey, if this thing goes, don't worry, you're going to get your piece. And then when the pieces started coming in, this is all handshake. This shit was not written down on a sheet of paper. And then Stan starts going, hey, I'm in the catbird seat. I'm going to protect my position. Right? Which means that, I'm going to make sure that I get mine. So I'm the fountainhead. I'm the fountainhead. Right? He's protecting his position with his uncle. Because if Jack Kirby's a genius, what the hell I need Stan Lee for? I'll just get rid of Stan and hire Jack. Right? I think people want to look at it like poor Jack Kirby. And I never thought poor Jack Kirby. I think the thing is that there was all that shit was handshake deals. I think he was only signing contracts in the end to get his artwork back and things like that. I think the same thing for Ditko and for almost every single person who was creating that stuff, right? Maybe you're the kind of person whose family thinks about that stuff, right? Maybe Bob Kane's dad had a lawyer. Maybe the two guys from, Siegel and Schuster didn't know anybody had a lawyer. That was not as common back in the day. Right? It's not as common. How many people here have a lawyer? How many people in the chat room have a lawyer? Know a lawyer. When they get a contract, if they got a contract today, how many people in the chat room would have a lawyer? Most of you probably don't. And you probably wouldn't know who to call.
Tom's always got a lawyer.
Right. And Tom's been in the business 40 years.
And if you don't know who to call, we have an episode with Gamal Hennessy.
So, two episodes.
So be sure to check our archives.
Well, look at this. The choir is preaching. I love it. And you're in the right place. So, go ahead,
but
Mike.
Those guys are professionals, right?
Yeah.
They sign contracts. So now they have lawyers, right? When I started the business, I didn't have a lawyer. I didn't have a lawyer until I started to self-publish. When I incorporated, my accountant also happened to be a lawyer, right? And so who incorporated Action Planet. So that was my first, but he's not an entertainment lawyer. He's a corporate lawyer, does things like that. So when I started getting offers to do stuff, then I got a entertainment lawyer, which is a different kind of lawyer. Because a lot of you may know a lawyer that's good at real estate or whatever. That means they may not know shit about entertainment, right? Like maritime lawyers and people like that know all kinds of very specific kinds of stuff.
Where'd you find this guy at the wharf?
And that's right.
Bird law.
Where's my lawyer?
Avian contracts.
Popeye is a maritime lawyer to work out his his damages from fighting Pluto and wrecking the war.
Well, I think this would be a good time to introduce our topic for tonight. See, because we tuned up the band. It's like we know what we're doing here. So this is kind of been going through I guess like the spine of our show since we've been on. Almost every show, Mike Manley will allude to kind of like I don't know, the adhesive of what makes a cartoonist stick together. That's what it is there. And Mike calls it personality. So last week, I think it was Super D who asked us, like, Mike says that all the time, but like, can you kind of explain that? So if you go back and watch last week's episode, kind of at the like hour mark, we got into this conversation. It was so riveting. We kind of came together over the last couple of days and says we gotta just make a whole episode about this. So tonight, you guys, this is the personality episode.
Your personality test.
That's right. Thanks, Steve Conley, for always making us look good with those graphics. So kind of what we want to do with the rest of the episode is kind of have. This isn't the Mike Manley episode, but we want to try to deconstruct this and maybe even take a personality test. Probably the first quiz was, do you have a lawyer? See, we already started. So this might ruffle some feathers. What we do here is just straight factual. This is what 3 expert cartoonists know, and they transfer to you through your video scope. So don't take it personally. If some of this stuff applies to you, good. Or if it doesn't, maybe it should. You know what I'm saying? See if any of this applies to you, and then see if you can make some concessions.
It's really all about empowering yourself to be more successful. Right? To me, that's where it's really you want to achieve your dream, right? Everybody, we've all met collectively hundreds, if not thousands, of people who want to be cartoonists, who want to be like us, sat in a seat in your underwear until 2:00, drawing pages and drinking coffee. People want to, you want to make your living drawing comic books or a comic strip, or working in animation, or being an artist, right? I mean, that's the main thing. Is everybody watching this, everybody going to school, people going to conventions, people going to Lightbox, people doing everybody wants to be a successful top flight artist, making your dream come true, right? Like Laverne and Shirley, and yet that's a very small percentage. If you took the aggregate of all the people in the world, from 12 to 50, all want to be successful. It's about 2%. And that was something I was told when I first started teaching. And I'd always heard, very few people were successful you always hear that, when you're a young artist coming into the business, older, more established people tend to give you little pearls of wisdom or sayings that they have heard. But when I started teaching, there was an older teacher who told me two things. One of them was sort of funny. One was that about only 1 or 2% of people who go to art school ever make a living as an artist, right? And that 98% of them were there to keep the lights on for the 2% who could become successful. And it sounds funny and sort of brutal, but I can tell you from having taught since around 2000, it is absolutely true. And all of this, I'm going to probably relate to you, and I'm sure, Jamar and Steve the same. It's like as you taught and you go through the business and the years mount up, we know people who were very successful, or some people who were always struggled, and some people who never get a leg over the horse. And you go, why is that? Why are there people who can, no matter what, they can't get a leg over the horse? They can hop up. You can pick them up and put them on the horse, and they'd fall off, right? And I really came to the conclusion that it's really the fundamental reason people are successful is they have the personality to be successful. And there are other people that might have talent. And again, I always put talent down the list because people think, if you're talented, that's the first thing. But I actually think that talent is third or fourth. I don't think talent is, because there's plenty of talented people that wash out. There's more talented people that wash out than that actually make it.
All right, so talent is 3 or 4. Is it jumping the gun to ask what 1 and 2, possibly 3 are?
For me, number 1 is having an open personality, right? You're open, truly open, because a lot of people think that they're open, and then you give them a critique and you realize that they're not open.
What do you mean by that, Mike?
Well, an open, I think it's always more difficult when we're discussing art, because art is it's sort of amorphous in a way, right? Now, if you were going to be a musician and you were going to play a piece of music, it's immediately apparent whether you are good. There's no lawyering. There's no, that's my style. It's like, that sounds good. Or like, please stop, Timmy. Don't play anymore. Or being a doctor, right? Being a scientist, there's no wiggle room. Right? Sure. It's chemistry. It's just either you know it or you don't.
The patient loses the leg or keeps the leg. Yeah,
exactly. Right. And it's the same in sports. Same in martial arts. You're doing martial arts, right? And so that when you do martial arts, you do the little basic moves, and all the more complex moves are based upon the basic moves. And if you can't ever do the basic, you can't, right? You cannot spin up in the air, go over backwards, and kick somebody in the head like you can now.
I've seen it.
Yeah. So I think that you have to have, that is the number one most important thing, is you have the kind of personality that is open enough to be able to learn, and open enough, because the other thing is that as an artist, I always break it down that you have the initial teenage years of interest, and maybe you're fortunate or unfortunate to get some instruction. Of course, now we have the internet. And then you have instruction years, which is schooling. And then you have career. So if I just take myself, because I know myself the best, as an example. From the time I was 13 to the time I was 23, right? So that was 10 years of me deciding that I wanted to be a comic book artist, to getting my first job as a professional, right? Assisting on Robotech Defenders, right? Now, I didn't have any instruction. I was all self-taught. So I'm sure I would have progressed even further if I'd had an actual teacher, but that opportunity didn't exist for me, as it didn't for most people of my generation. That was, if you lived in New York, you could go to the Kubert School, or briefly, I think Buscema had his school. But, most people who want to draw comics never went to school to learn how to draw comics, right? So, again, you have to have the kind of personality that can take that 10 years of going, I want to do this, to like, I'm starting to do this. And then all that time in between, you didn't get knocked off you didn't get, knocked off the horse. You didn't lose your enthusiasm. You didn't lose your concentration. You didn't lose your fixation. But you also continue to improve.
Right.
Right. You also, you would take any opportunity to improve. And when I was young, the only opportunities I would have to get any kind of real feedback would be to go to a comic book convention and see an artist, and not like today where there's like 10 conventions every week. There was like one here, one there, one here, one there, one, so maybe a couple times a year. If I didn't have my job, I was free that weekend, or I could get off from my job or whatever. And then you go to a convention and you take your portfolio and you show it to somebody, and they go, even if it was somebody you didn't like, whose work you didn't care for, wasn't like your hero. You go and you show them your work, and they give you a critique, and you take it to heart, right? Or do you go, that's fucking bullshit. I know my shit. Just give me Stan's number.
I just need the contacts.
Yeah, exactly. That's a long time to stay focused, right?
What and how? Again, Mike, like Jamar said, let's not to put Mike on the spot all the entire 90 minutes. But what was your method of staying focused on that? What were you like? Were the jobs you were taking to keep the lights on, to pay your rent, were those things you chose specifically to let you keep striving to be a cartoonist, or how did you get through those 10 years?
I think I was just a fanatic. I was just tenacious. And I think that I stayed focused on that goal. I wasn't going to give up on that goal, and I would do anything. I was going to do anything to continue to get toward that goal, right? So I would take advantage of any opportunity to learn, any opportunity, which again were as rare as hen's teeth for me to meet somebody. And then when I got into business, I was fortunate and open to taking opportunities like, learning and being friends with Ricardo Villagran, Brett, and then sharing Al Williamson's studio. So, I got in 84, and by 85, 86, I was going up to visit Al. And then I shared his studio for a little bit over a year before I moved back, because then he sold the house and everything, and I moved back to Philly. But, also in that time, my old partner and I did she was doing work for Golden Books and stuff. So through her and her agent and those people and those contacts, I started doing all the kids' books and all the other stuff. So again, I took advantage of any opportunity. I don't care about Muppet Babies, right? I don't care about Hot Wheels. I mean, I liked them when I was a kid, But I did a lot of jobs and took an opportunity to learn anything that I could because I wanted to work. My goal was that I continue to learn, I take advantages of opportunities. If you're a nice person, if you're open and you're nice, people like you. Opportunities come out of that. Now you cannot be as open as you think you are, right? And so I used to tell the students a story where, let's imagine you go to a bus, you're waiting for the bus, and you're in a bad mood, and you're kind of an ornery person. Maybe you're a bit dickish, right? And we've all been in a social situation where someone's giving you a bad vibe. You get a bad vibe. Maybe that person's having a bad day, or maybe they're just kind of we all know assholes, right? Probably 10% of people are like in the population are permanent assholes. All right. So
I know a lot of assholes.
Right. So if you're standing there, you're probably not going to have a conversation, or people are probably not going to avoid you, or they don't want to make eye contact. Maybe that person works for a publisher. Maybe that person has an opportunity that would benefit you, but that's not going to happen because your personality is such that you're not going to make a contact with that person, right? Or you can have an opportunity and be a dick, straight up dick, and burn that bridge right away because you don't know how to talk to people. You don't know how to negotiate, right? You get the opportunity and you're like, oh, by the way, this is not exactly what I want to do, or you know what I mean? That happens all the time. So you can be open, but not as open as you think, or not easy to get along with. I think if you're open, that means you're really open, which means that anything you have to do to get to the next step, you will do, because your goal is to get to your goal. And if you go like, well, I got to do this thing to get here, maybe I don't love it, but I will do it because I want to get there. But if your personality is that can't happen, or you're going to be difficult to work with, or you're going to be late, or you're not going to be responsible, you'll piss that person off. That person will not be a resource for you. You don't get to the next step. And I know there are many stories I heard in comics and in animation of people who are really super talented. But there's always a but, right? If you're the top person, you can get away with being a dick for a while. But the very nanosecond that person doesn't need you, you're done. You are completely done. You probably have the kind of personality that blames everybody else. Everybody else's fault. It's everybody else's fault. If you're the kind of person who goes, is everybody else's fault? It's your fault. It's your fault. And a lot of this stuff I sort of started connecting when I was teaching, because when you're teaching, you see young people at the early part of their career, which is the most important part of the career. Your first 3-7 years are really important because it's the years where you train, you meet people, you start building your skill set, going out, getting opportunities, making good or making bad. And if you make bad and you don't learn from that, by the time you're 30, your personality is pretty ossified. It's more ossified. It's more concrete than most people think it is. Everybody thinks, no, I'm a super flexible person. And that actually is not as true as you probably think. I would have a lot of experience with students who would be more interested in lawyering than actually working. A lot of excuses, a lot of reasons why, right? And if they put that same amount of effort into trying to lawyer into actually working, there wouldn't be a problem.
Mike, I have this quick story. So a long time ago, when I worked at Warner Brothers studio stores at your local mall. That's right. I was a what do they call it?
Sales associate.
Yeah, what they call it, backstage. We had some weird little name. Wear all black. It was a thing. But there was this cat that I worked with. He was a seasonal guy, and he came in. He was like, "Yo, JN, check this out. Come here." So I follow him on the floor, and he like presses himself up against the back of a column. I'm like, "What are you doing?" He was like, "Yo, if you sit back here and take a nap, the boss will never find you." He spent more time trying to get out of work than to just get through his shift. Yo, if you crawl into the rocket ship and take a nap, they'll never find you. So that's another way of wasted energy, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people when they go to art school, it's really sort of the time between high school and whatever else they end up having to really do for the rest of their life, because they're not going to be an artist. They may always like art, they may be a hobbyist, that's fine, but they're not going to be a professional. And they put a lot of effort towards things that are not going to serve them towards their goal. Right? So they will lawyer their teachers. They will have a lot of excuses. They won't be prepared to work. They will consistently not be prepared to work, and they will consistently have bad priorities. Right? So again, open personality, but is it open? And then if your personality is not as open, then you get to the point where you're not going to get along with people, or you're going to start trying to like lawyer why these things are not, that teacher is mean to me, that person is a dick, this person's a problem, right? It's going to be all about the other people, not about you. It's going to be all about the other people. And you're going to put a lot of time into that and not being honest about yourself or your work, right? So that's what I'm saying. If you have that kind of personality, you're not going to be successful. If you were so fantastic, if you were Mobius or Frazetta or Kirby, but you had that kind of personality,
JAMAR NICHOLAS,
you still would not end up being as successful as you could be, because you'd be difficult to get along with.
I think that's understated. I know, just being in the suit for so long, I know a lot of hyper talented people, but they, constantly. What is that one meme where the guy's riding a bike and he puts a stick in his own tire and just like goes over there? Like, there's a lot of that. You know what I mean? There's a lot of getting in with the wrong crowd, getting in the internet beefs, clicking up with the wrong people, and none of that has to do with like actually producing work. You know what I mean? Being a personality in a different way of your personality, being an internet personality is also something that kind of gives people kind of like the smoke screen of being successful. And I've had to like root through a lot of those people over the years who kind of like were like, dude, we're here together, simpatico. I was like, where's your book? You know what I mean? So, but
Jack Kirby is an influencer. Jack Kirby is an influencer, right? He's an influencer because of his career and because of his work, right? So if there's that is the only kind of influencer in the art field that counts. You influence people by your work, right? All that other stuff, all the other window dressing, it's not gonna last, right? Because it's not real. So again, if your personality is open, you're saying yes. If your personality open, you're saying, and you want to say yes because you want to get to your goal. If your personality is not open, you always start saying no. Well,
a lot of but.
Yeah, So when I would teach someone and they want to lawyer a bad drawing, or while they're late, or why they are not prepared, or whatever, that's saying no. That's saying no. That's not being open, right? They don't think about it that way, but that's really the way it is. You're not being open, and again, art is different because it doesn't seem concrete. It seems amorphous. But in a sports team, you're either first string, second string, sitting on the bench. And that's because when you go out and they throw you the pass, or you're supposed to do this or do whatever, you don't. You drop the ball. You lose, right? You turn over, right? You turn over the ball. They put you back on the bench. There's no arguing. There's no like, well, the coach was mean to me. I mean, I know I dropped the ball, but the coach was mean to me. He should have still let me play. Nobody says that, right? But in art, we always do that.
There's a lot of buts in our business. To that point, Mike, we have a couple of things starred in the comments. You know America's Tom Zoller. You know him from your dreams. Tom Zoller says, comics also has a low bar to entry. If you wash out of medical school, you can't do surgery as a hobby.
That's true.
But you could always keep drawing. Hi, Dr. Nick.
But see, that's what I'm talking about, right? Because you think I can do this. You're in your fantasy, you're in your head. You're not in the real world. You're in your head. You're in your imagination. You're in your dream machine. I can do this, right? My samples are good enough. JR can't draw Spider-Man. I can draw Spider-Man.
That's one of the things that always was a little bit of a red flag when meeting other cartoonists. And they said, man, I'm better than the worst guy at Marvel. I'm like, well, you're not comparing yourself to the best guy at Marvel. They were always like, I'm better than, and they pick whoever the current fashion to pick on. And they say, I'm better inker than X. And like, well, but you're not better than Terry Austin, and so I don't know. There's a few little red flags like that. So I definitely see what you're saying.
That's the weekly Wednesday bitch fest when people go into the comic book store and they look at the new stuff and like, how the fuck this guy get the job? I'm better than that guy. Meanwhile, they haven't drawn 20 pages in their life. Right? Mm-hmm. They got a whole bunch of half-finished shit. But they think, oh, I'm better than this guy, right? If you're sitting, again, that's not a successful personality, right? And I would always say that you can go in a comic book store and you can look at the worst fucking job on the shelf. That person is doing something that you're not doing. What is that person doing that you're not doing?
Finishing pages.
Finishing things. Yeah. So here's another one from our good buddy Sanchai from in the land down under. Good morning. Sanchai says, I heard that there are 3 things you need to succeed. Be good, be on time, and people like working with you, which I guess could also include personality in this context. And if you have any 2 you can succeed. Would you guys agree with that triangle?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's often one of those things that's given at a commencement.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that also works differently when you're an artist, because an artist has to generate something out of whole cloth.
Yeah.
Right. So I can show up at the 7-Eleven and I can be the worst guy making sandwiches, but I'm very efficient with every other part of the job. So maybe they don't have me make sandwiches, but I could still maybe end up being manager of 7-Eleven. You cannot draw Spider-Man with that analogy. It doesn't work for comics.
This sandwich tastes like dirty mop water. What are you doing back there?
What's a string in here?
Right.
There's mop string in my sandwich.
But there's a minimum talent threshold where that begins to apply, those 3 points of being good on time and have a nice personality. If you don't meet a minimum threshold, of those three.
Yeah, but again, I think that ad is baked into the other part. And again, I always stress this because being an artist and being a comic book artist is being a very specific kind of artist. It really takes a particular type of personality that this job works for, and it does not work. If you're a fidgety person and you cannot work long hours with focused concentration, you can't do this. It's not going to happen because you won't be able to produce the work, right? That's the other part of it. I love drawing more than I love anything else, and I can clearly say that now at my age, right? I can really clearly say that. I mean, I always knew it was true, but I really know that it's true now.
This is something I heard early on in my career. I was reading a lot of books on writing, and one of the things they said was you wanted to be a person who likes to write, not be a person who likes to have written. That there was, and I think that applies to art cartooning as well. You want to cartoon, not to have cartooned. So I feel like that was really key. And yeah,
it is. I mean, I had a student once come up to me. He was a little bit older than the other students, and he, about halfway through the semester, before the drop ad came, he decided to quit and go back. I think he was originally studying history. And I said, that's a great thing. The fact that you realize that it's not for you, and this other thing might be a better fit. That is a fantastic thing, rather than to keep dashing yourself against the rocks of despair, trying to do something that you're just not fit to do. And again, he was a little older, a little bit more mature. There's a lot of students, a lot of wannabe cartoonists who are really not honest, and they're not giving an honest effort. That's why I came to call teaching Pikachu Fantasy Camp, because you had all the kids with all the Pikachu hats and all the stuff, and they're all with their friends, and it's all fun, and you're having a bonding experience, but you're not working. You're putting all the time into the fantasy of having your show on Cartoon Network, not cracking the books, not doing the extra figure drawing, not doing the extra, the more. It's never enough. At 64, I never draw enough. I never know enough. I'm never good enough. I can always improve. If you don't have that as part of your personality, you can't manufacture it. You can't I'm just going to stick this thing on. It won't stick, right? That's why a lot of people fall. One of the reasons why a lot of people fall off, because it's really, they eventually find out that there's something else that they like to do more.
Is there a way, because what I worry about when sometimes we have this conversation, because I always want to have the back of the person who's kind of on the cusp, like someone who thinks they have the raw materials and they can turn this engine on somehow. Maybe it's untapped. How is there? I'm presuming this isn't just, just nature dominating nurture. Is there a way for a person to cultivate these skills and find a way to activate these personality elements so that they can become that kind of cartoonist?
Would you say that about somebody who wanted to be a doctor or a musician or play sports?
Again, if they have the raw materials, I just sometimes think people can be in a place where they have the raw materials but have not found a way to. There, some principles missing, some context is missing that does not allow them to see that they've learned this lesson for the first 20 years of their life, that shirking that responsibility pays just as well. But at some point they have that, you hope they have that spark, that moment of realization where they go, I can apply these things. I can turn this on.
I'm not going to hide in a rocket ship. I'm actually going to get up and do my job.
That's personality.
But yeah, I just hate that idea that it's some sort of destiny that you either have it or you don't. And I want to think that I basically want to encourage people to, okay, let's say this. Let's say you have let's say if it's if it's a binary state of either you have it or you don't. Let's say you have it, but you haven't nurtured it. How can you nurture it to make it better?
Well, you have to become self-aware.
Okay.
If you become self-aware, that also means that you're becoming honest. And if you can become honest, then you can say to yourself, I'm not being honest. Right. I'm not being true about my goal.
Because some people could have they could be 22 and have never heard these words. But I do think this is the sort of information that you're dropping here, that you're boiling down, that could be pretty potent, right? That could help turn someone's thought around.
Well, true. I know maybe you meet a teacher or a mentor who says that to you. I think, honestly, it's kind of instinctual. I don't know a lot of people who go, I was a jerk off until I was 25 and then suddenly, I matured. It does happen.
Right.
It's a very small percentage of people who go, I actually had the potential. I was pretty talented. I was a complete jerk off until I was 25. And then my dad died, or, the evil people captured my village and I was the only one left surviving. Something happened. I
was on YouTube and I caught this guy in a spacesuit giving really good advice.
Right. I think that is within the 1 or 2%.
Fair enough.
That's still within that demographic of the 1 or 2%. Right.
I love this conversation, and I'm glad that Steve is kind of giving not like a point counterpoint, but there's no absolutes, right? But for even the sake of what we're talking about, there's a lot of like tenets that make this work. And if you're missing a lot of those tent poles, your tent's probably not going to stand up.
No, you don't do this in any other profession. You don't do this if you're a musician. You don't show up to the gigs, you don't practice, you don't get good.
Right.
And nobody sits down 30 years later and goes, well, it doesn't work that way. People really do this a lot with the visual arts. They really do that because they imagine, they sort of Hollywood this fantasy. You can. I believe that if anyone has a type of personality or works on themselves so they can become honest, they can focus, and are willing to do whatever it is they have to do. Right. Whatever it is you have to do to be successful, you stand a chance, because there's no 100% guarantees. But if you are saying, I am not willing to do whatever I have to do, and that's different for everybody, because not everybody has the same kind of personality, the same opportunity, the same ability. It's not evenly distributed. There's no even playing field. There's no even distribution of opportunity, no even distribution of natural ability. And again, if Michael Jordan didn't show up and play and practice every day, he wouldn't have been in the NBA, right? So you can have that, and again, we tend to do this. We think, I have a Superman inside of me. I just need that moment, when I can, and it for this profession, it doesn't work that way. But we imagine that it works that way. We imagine that we can suddenly be the person and that's a big thing with I think the American mindset, the American student mindset. We imagine we can suddenly be this person that we have never been before. All these movies, all of these stories are about the person who can magically do this thing that they've never been able to do before. And I don't believe it is that simple. It is it is a concentrated or a long time consistent effort. And if you're not open, and then you're not honest, then the other parts don't happen, right? Because if you're open and you're honest, and you can take advantage of an opportunity. If you're not honest, you don't take advantage of an opportunity. You squander an opportunity. And most art students in most arts schools squander that. It doesn't appear that they're squandering because they show up, right? You pay the money. I got B's on all my stuff, and then you don't end up being successful, and then eventually you got to go do some other job, right?
Yeah, the hiring down at the construction site, bro.
I mean, that is the most common story. The most common story. So, like I said, if you start out thinking that's going to be even, and everybody's going to have the same opportunity, and everybody's going to, again, you're not being honest with yourself. You're not being realistic. Right?
I think well, I agree with everything Mike says, and I think there's also some. If you look back at the very rich archive of interviews we've had on here, and I always ask the interviewees this catalyst question moment. What was it that made you that got you over the wall, that made you punch through, that made you jump off the cliff? And everyone has an answer, right? Everyone has an answer, and I think maybe it's even a little scary that you guys watch us every week and you go, oh well, I know Stone Cold Steve Conley. I'm a cartoonist too, but I was just reading this thing and they were talking about being surrounded by information and not applying it. You can watch all the self-help podcasts and blogs until your eyes bleed, but are you applying any of it? Right? Those are two separate things.
Mm-hmm.
So I just hope that people don't, it sounds frustrating, but until you turn this off and open up a sketchbook and start drawing in it and complete something, what are we talking about?
That's very true. That's very true. Because I would, a lot of students, in fact, most students, again, we're talking about most people. Most people want to do this. Most students find that once graduation is over, the momentum of the semester, the momentum of your peers, the momentum of me as your teacher going, where's your homework? Remember next week your homework. Did you do your homework? The finals are coming up.
Mm-hmm.
When that goes away, they don't have an oar in the water. They're not paddling. They don't have any real motivation. Their motivation was actually being put upon them. They were being forced or propelled by the momentum of being in a school, which is an incubator trying to make them thrive. You've got your tests. There's left to their own.
Right.
Oh, where do I don't have to turn in any work. I got to make my own goals. I got to make my own deadlines. I got to refresh my own portfolio. I got to constantly be refreshing. I've got to study figure drawing. I got to draw pages now. Oh, I have this idea for a story. I got to draw pages. If you want to be a cartoonist, you want to be a comic book artist, cartoonist, you got to draw pages. Constantly drawing pages. All the time, whether you're being in print or you're just cranking out stuff to show on your Instagram or you're doing a webcomic. If you want to do this for a living and you're not constantly doing pages, that's like saying I want to be Mr. Universe, but occasionally I lift every other weekend.
There's a line. There's a pro sumo wrestler. I've mentioned in passing once or twice. I check out sumo now. I'm into it. There's a 41-year-old professional sumo wrestler. He's like the oldest guy in pro sumo. He has his favorite quote is "Practice doesn't lie."
Wow.
And then the other false thing for people too, that is a consequence of our modern world, is likes don't mean shit. Right? You can get a lot of people liking your stuff, but you don't know whether that person has any taste. And then you take your stuff that was liked and you send it out, and nobody in the professional world reacts to it. Right? So again, you're dealing with all of that. But if you love drawing pages, you love drawing, you sit down and do it anyway. You would do that because that's what you love to do. And you really have to have that first. And everything else comes out of that. If you have the right kind of personality. I learned to be able to tell the kind of student within the first day or two of class who had the kind of personality I'm talking about, right? There were the people who are very excited and very exuberant. That person is probably not going to be the person, right? The person in the back who has a sketchbook full of ideas, pages, that's the person who has a real chance. Now, maybe they don't have the other parts of the puzzle, right? Because we really need them all.
Yeah.
But if you got a sketchbook full of ideas, and not just like heads, another head, another head, another little head, another little manga head, another little head over here, real stuff, real drawing, real thinking, because this job is thinking. It's thinking in service of telling a story in various formats, designing a character or drawing a cover. It is thinking.
Right.
It is thinking first, and then the information that you accrue in your memory bank from practice is then accessed to help you solve a problem. I want you to draw this story. I want you to draw this cover. I want you to design this character. I want you to do this storyboard, right? And it's all comes through. You got to generate it from here. You got to read a script and then turn that into a narrative, whether it's a storyboard or a comic book. If you don't really enjoy that, you can't fool yourself, because what'll happen is you will never finish the fucking story. You'll never finish it, right? And so if you've got all these stories that you never finished, right? If you got all these pages that you never finished, you've got all these ideas that you never finished, then you don't have the kind of personality that's allowing yourself to be honest about achieving your goal. And within 5 or 6 years, it will become apparent. It may not be apparent now, but eventually life goes, this is not working. You got a plan B. You got a plan B. I had a conversation with a young guy a month or so ago about that. Do you have a plan B? And I'm saying this in a real honest way. If this doesn't work for you as a profession, that's fine. Then have a plan B. You can always do this whenever you want to, like, your model railroad on the weekend, or your fantasy camp, right? The guys that go down to Florida to pay money to do the fantasy baseball camp.
Right.
How many of those people ever came out of there and went into the pros? Nobody, probably, right? But with comics and animation and cartooning, people can harbor that idea that, I'm going to go into the comic book store on Wednesday. I'm going to look at this guy's work, this gal's work, that's complete shit and not worthy of being on these pages. And next week, somehow magically, my work is going to be on the shelf. And it just doesn't work.
It doesn't work that way. We're going to start wrapping up soon, but our good buddy Ray Anthony Height, what up, Ray? Go back and watch our episodes with Ray. I think we've had 2 or 3 of them. I think he got his master's jacket. Ray says to you, Mike, I think all the students we've come across come to their moment of truth. That's very true. I was going to say something about that. The moment they realize that this isn't as easy as they fantasize and these pages ain't going to draw themselves. That's a very, as we might call, the come to Jesus moment.
Right. Look, I was up at 5 o'clock this morning to finish the last 3 dailies for the Phantom. And this was a particularly difficult week because I had to draw guys inside of a jail cell. Right? So I got people on one side of the jail cell and the people inside the jail cell, and drawing a jail cell and being able to stage things so that you can see what people are doing, or it's not easy, right? This particular story has several scenes where the Phantom keeps knocking out guys and taking them to the jail cell. And then the guys are in the jail cell and they're talking to somebody on the other side of the jail cell. It's not fun.
No.
Right? It's not fun to fucking draw people in a jail cell. It's never fun. It's difficult.
Yeah.
It's difficult to stage. It's a difficult problem. It's a thinking problem, which is what I was talking about before. But my personality is such that I don't give up, and I'm going to fucking lick this problem. I don't like it. It's not fun, like just punching somebody in the face, or drawing a monster. But I got to solve this problem. And I got to try to make it cool, and I got to make it interesting. Right? My personality is I have a problem. I don't like it. But I got to try to make it good. I got to make it work. I don't want it to beat me. I want to beat this person. I want to beat this problem. Right? And it's only through stubbornness, maybe, and through years of practice that I can make myself get up at 5:30 in the morning to fucking draw guys inside of a jail cell. Right? And again, there's a lot of this job that people think is fun, and it looks fun when you watch me draw it. Right? When you see me sketch at a convention or you watch me draw something in one of my videos, it looks fun. You don't know what's going on in here. You don't know the fight, right, or the battles, and that's what I'm saying. I think if you have the right kind of personality to be successful, it works out. And it's just that most people don't have the kind of personality that works for doing this very specific type of job. It is, you might have the kind of personality that's good at doing portraits, or you might have that's good at doing landscapes or sculpture or some other creative artistic endeavor. But if you're going to do comics, or you're going to do storytelling, you're going to do illustration, you're going to do animation, it's a very specific type of job. And most artists don't have the personality to do this for a living.
Mike, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
I also want to add to this, and this is also a big piece of this. If you can easily get knocked off of your square by the world, or resistance, or that girlfriend who just won't get off your ass about you wasting your time doing these goddamn comic books, you don't have the personality for it. You got to protect this like a pit bull, or it'll get taken from you. And if you're willing to just let it go, then maybe it wasn't for you.
That's very right? True. That's very, very true. I mean, I again, if you have this kind of personality and you really love doing this, then you have to be with a partner that understands that. And if the partner doesn't understand that, then it won't work out. Because if you're going to work 10, 12 hours a day, 6-7 days a week, which most cartoonists I know do, they work at least 6 days a week and work at least 10 hours. Nobody does this like 8 hours a day. If you're doing a comic strip or you're doing a regular monthly book, you just won't be able to produce enough volume of work, right? And again, this is not the kind of job where you're always just repeating it's not like if you go to Subway, there's a little recipe to make your sandwich, and it's always the same. Sometimes you put mayonnaise, sometimes you put mustard. But my week is never the same. Every week is a different challenge. I have the kind of personality that enjoys the fight. right? I want to beat it. I want to beat this problem. But some people are like, no, man, I don't want to draw a comic strip. I want to do a graphic novel because I want to have a long deadline. Again, if you're honest, right? A long deadline, like Jamar, just like every time I call him, he's sipping mint juleps, like, hey, Mike, what are you doing today? Oh, I think I'll go take a nap.
Yeah, no.
And while you're doing all that, you're lining up the next gig.
Bing. Yep. That's right. We folded in. That's right. I just wrapped up the Leon 3. I feel like I've been working on that book for 2 years. Easy. And there's also that part we always talk about and we don't talk about enough. Is like I had to write that too. And I have a team of editorial in front of me, and I have all of these other things in front of me, and there's a lot of back and forth. It's a lot of pickleball going on. You know what I mean? The last thing, I've said this to Micah several times, the last thing I get to do is draw it. I'm at the end when I start drawing, not the beginning. You know what I mean? So if you don't have the personality, like I remember at the beginning of all, like before the graphic novel boom, there were a lot of indie guys who they were looking at. They're like, oh, you guys, you've done all these, you've got all these mini comics, you've done all these like single issues of things. You should come over here and do these graphic novels. They couldn't finish. A lot of those dudes washed out because they couldn't handle the deadlines, the extended long ass deadline. Can you have this book done this time next year? That's a whole year, of course. Whoa.
How many pages is a typical Leon book?
250.
Like even just telling someone, can you draw 250 pages? That's just to me that seems like Herculean. So it's fantastic. Fantastic.
Well, again, that's you have that personality. Steve has that personality, and the thing is, now we know that as soon as we meet another person, really, whether they have that kind of personality, right? Like I said, I know within sometimes in the first class, who in the class probably has that kind of personality, right? I can give people a couple drawing assignments, and I learn a lot. Like when I started mentoring Liang and Mimi, who eventually became assistants. One of the reasons why they became assistants is because they had the right kind of personality.
That's great.
Which means that when I would give them a critique, they would listen, and then they would do the drawing over. Most students, when you give them a critique and you tell them to do the drawing over, no, I'll do it on the next job.
I'll get you next time.
Right. That was, and I remember Mimi showed me a drawing that she was doing in class. And this was when I first met her, just at the school. And I did a little critique, did a little drawing over, and she did the drawing over. Right. The same way with Liang. That told me that they were open to improving their work and going, okay, this is not good enough. No matter how much effort I put into this, I want to make this better. A, open personality, right? B, willing to do the work over. That knocks 95% of the people out of the box right away because they don't want to do the drawing over. Right. Which is why I said that art is different, because in sports, you're always doing the play over. You run, go down 10 yards, cut to the left, throw the ball, catch it. You drill on that when I play football, you drill on those things all week. When I took karate very shortly, drilling on these basic things. So you didn't say like, oh, teacher, I did my kata the one time. Come on, can I split a board now? Yeah. If you don't have that, it makes it really difficult to get to the other steps. Really
Guys,
difficult.
Mike, put your pencil down, bro. We did it. I don't know where the time goes, guys. I say this every Wednesday at 8 p.m. EST. I mean, 9:30 PST. EST. Where's the time go? I know, a punch drunk. But I hope that this little time with your favorite three expert cartoonists did something for your soul. I hope it did. And we're just here to inform, educate, and enlighten.
Give yourself a personality test. Think about, we could rewatch this. Write down this stuff. Try to be honest. That's the most important step, is to be honest with yourself. Right? Are you open? Are you willing to do these things? Is this really a passion? A real passion, not a passing fancy, right? And if you can be honest with yourself and you can be open and you're willing to do the work, right? And there's no end date for that. That's the other thing, right? These things I'm talking about, we're all talking about. There's no end date for this. Is just the way it is, right? You don't suddenly not be open. You don't suddenly become difficult, things like that.
Yeah.
This is something that you can grow into and you can be honest with. But if you don't, it's very hard for you to be successful. And the thing is the older you get, the harder it is, because as we all get older, our personalities become more concrete. Right? That's why it's really important to learn these things and think about these things when you're younger. It's not that you can't do it when you're 60, but it's a lot harder because you got 59 years of the other way.
Crunch. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I just, write these things down. I think writing is very good. Thinking about things, writing things down, looking at things very concretely. Try to have good practices. Write a list of good practices.
That's right.
Is that what you wrote that down? You wrote down touch grass?
Yeah, I told my Patreon, my Patronuses, that this 2026 is the year of the field notes. 2026 is the year of writing everything down. Write it down. That's what we're doing. So even if you have a book that is just like, I got to put affirmations in this book and put it in my back pocket, touch grass.
Nice.
That's what we're doing. All right, guys, let's call it a night. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mike, for your expert speech. I don't know what they call that. And thank you, Stone Cold Steve Conley, as always. Guys, I'll give you some housekeeping. We will be back tomorrow. Well, I'll be back tomorrow because it's your favorite group therapy session, Coffee Break with J.Ed. We'll be back here at 9 p.m. EST. I hope you're coming to group, and I hope you bring your Snackles. At Tabernacle, we have snacks.
Snackles?
You like that? Guys, thanks so much. And again, I hope you get something from this. And go back and watch our archive. We answer all the questions in the archive.
Go draw something. Go draw something right now.
I'm going to.
Yeah, me too. So, guys, Cumberbatch told me this while we were plummeting through a wormhole, that we're in the end game now. So I think it would behoove all of you guys out there in the video land to watch those curvy heads and own your stuff.
So that's the own your stuff hand?
Yeah, own your stuff. We'll see you next time. Good night.